Okay, we're ready to go up here to the top of our detail. What we want to add in is the mud sill and the anchor bolt. Now let's look at some pictures just to see exactly what it is we're talking about. Okay, the anchor bolt is just a bolt. It's a threaded bolt and it goes down inside the concrete. It also has a hook like our last rebar piece did. And then at the top here you can see there's a washer and then a nut. And that's going to hold the wood onto the concrete. You can imagine how hard would it be to get wood to attach to concrete if we didn't have a good system like this. You can't use nails, right? You can't put a nail down through this wood and expect that in a really big windstorm that's going to hold all this wood down onto the concrete. We need something like this. We need an actual anchor. And here's another picture, just kind of a graphic, and it's a good one because it shows here's a wall, here's a foundation, and here's an anchor bolt. That one doesn't happen to have a bend in it, but they don't always. And the ones we do will definitely have a bend. So that anchor gets put into the concrete while it's still wet. And then it sticks up out of the concrete. And then they'll come in and they'll put what's called the mud sill, right? This is the mud sill. That's the pressure treated wood, so it's allowed to touch concrete. And then on top of that mud sill, you can either put more wood, or you can put your floor, or you can put walls, or whatever you need to. But some way, this has to be fastened down to the concrete, and in this case, they're using these anchor bolts. Okay, so what does it look like for our detail? Well, you should have the families in your project already. If not, make sure that you go to Insert, Load Autodesk Family, and you find the ones that you need. The two that I'm thinking of are just like last time, they're going to be detail components. So go Annotate, hit the drop down if you need to, find detail component, and we're looking for dimension lumber section 2x6. So once again, if you don't have that in here, just type in dimension and find the size you need. But if you don't have that in here, you need to go load the family and just search for dimension lumber and make sure that you choose the right size. It's probably going to ask you what size you want, and you would need maybe a 2x6 and a 2x4 is all. Okay, so here's the 2x6. And when you push the space bar, it'll rotate that around. And I want this to go right on top of my concrete. And I want it to line up over here on this edge. Okay, this is the outside edge of the house over here. And this will be the inside space. So I want it to line up out here on the outside edge. And now we need to show that we're going to attach this thing to the concrete. So one more time, we'll go to our detail component. And this time I'm going to look for an anchor bolt. I've got 3 sizes. 1/2 inch is the one that I want. And there's that hook. You can see it. And I'm going to put it right towards the middle of that 2x6. And I'm just careful. I want to make sure that this thing doesn't overlap or conflict with my vertical piece here or my horizontal. And this will work. And it's okay if they cross over just like that. They're going to be staggered, so it's fine. Okay, now if yours looks different in any way, it could be that you need to turn on your thick lines. See, this is what it looks like with thin. When I go to thick lines, I've got a nice thick line around my 2x6, but it's not super thick, right? It's not quite as thick as the concrete wall here. And I don't know what yours is going to look like, so if you need to make a change, watch this part of the video. If you don't need to make a change, then maybe skip forward a little bit. If you want to make the change, I'm going to change what the outline looks like or how thick it is, and I'm going to click on Edit Family. In here, this is an editing mode just for that 2x6. And I can click on the lines here and find out that they're called outline in their subcategory. Think of this as a line style or a line weight. How thick is this line? And how do we control that? Well, if we go over here to Manage, Object Styles, you can see that we've got a few different categories, one of which is outline. And right now it's assigned to a line weight of 3. If it's a 1, that's the thinnest line. 5 is what we consider to be thick or wide lines, so 3 is right in the middle, which is where it ought to be, so make that change if yours isn't already a 3. And then we simply just load this back into our project. We're going to make sure to use Load into Project and Close because we don't need to keep this open, and we don't need to save any changes. We'll just click Load. If you have more than one project open, it'll ask you which one to load it into. I'll click OK. Okay, it may prompt you right there to say, do you want to override the existing version of your 2x6? And if that's the case, just go ahead and say yes. Okay, if you don't notice any changes, let's say that you just went through those motions and you don't see any change in the line weight here, there's one more thing you might try, and that is, once again, go Manage, Object Styles, and look for Outline in this project. And there it is, it's assigned to 3, but you can also change it here. And at this point, we're done with everything here at the top of the detail. We do need to put in some text and some annotations to call out what these things are, but we're going to wait till later for that. Right now, let's go down here to the bottom of the detail. We need to add in some filled regions. And filled regions are just patterns, just drawing patterns that show what surrounds all of this detail. You know, we're going to have some dirt over here. We're going to have some gravel down in here because this side is our crawl space. This side is the earth that we're holding back to form that crawl space. So the way this works is that we need to find the right filled region, the one that shows the pattern that indicates whatever the material is, and then we need to draw an outline for it. So let's begin. We'll go to Annotate and then Region, hit the drop down, find Filled Regions. And from your list over here, you probably don't have one that says Earth. You can see I've got one, but you probably don't have one yet. So since you don't have one, just go ahead and pick anything that's here. You know, start up here at the top. I'll pick something like concrete, and we're going to create a new one from this concrete. Go ahead and hit Edit Type, and we'll select Duplicate. We want to name it Earth. And initially, after renaming it, we haven't made any changes to its settings, so it still thinks that this is supposed to display as concrete. In other words, renaming it doesn't really do anything to change what its appearance will be. Instead, we need to come to the foreground fill pattern and give that something that pertains to Earth. And if we click here, from our drafting patterns, you should have one in here called Earth. And it looks like this. It's got lines running left, right, then up, down, left, right. And that's just a pattern you should expect to see in the industry. Whenever you see that pattern, you'll know that you're looking at something that's cutting through the earth. I'll go ahead and select that. We want to give it a color. This one can stay somewhat light. It's sort of a busy looking pattern. And with busy looking patterns, I like to keep them light. When they're not quite as busy, I like to make them darker. All right, we'll click OK and OK. And now as you draw the outline, you can see, if we were just experimenting here, that I can draw a box, and that should be my earth pattern, but clearly I didn't get this to stick. Let's try that again. Okay, and okay. There we go. Okay, so it's just going to fill whatever region you draw. Okay, and then the outline here is based on whatever line style I used. So if I go in here to edit that, click on this, you can see that's a line style of 1, a thin line. Okay, none of this is what I really want. Instead, I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to start drawing with some thick lines. And I'm going to draw this about a foot down on the right hand side of my detail, about a foot down from the foundation. That's where the earth starts. And the reason that I'm drawing this with a thick line is because I'm overlapping the concrete through here. And if I used a thin line, it would actually take away part of the detail. So I need this to match whatever it is that I'm tracing. And we are just going to trace right around our concrete here. When we get to the bottom of the footing, we need to stop. We do want the earth to extend over this way, but no longer with a thick line, because we're no longer overlapping with that footing. So hit escape, and then you can go back to your line style. And what should this actually be? I don't know. We'll do it as a 1. How's that? I'm going to draw this over, and then it's going to come down. And this is just an arbitrary amount. You know, I'm just trying to show there's earth underneath the footing, but I'm not trying to show how much, because that would go on forever. Okay, I'll come over here to the right, and then I'm going to draw this upward and at an angle like this. And there's nothing particular about that angle. In fact, the earth isn't really angled through there, other than maybe the part that we dug out for the foundation came down at an angle. So this should all be considered backfill earth, while everything over here is undisturbed earth. But that's not really important. I'm just drawing an angle because it kind of looks nice. Okay, when I get to the top, now I'm going to change this to be a grade line. And if you don't have a grade line, just use a thick line. Okay, a grade line is thicker than a thick line, and that's why I want to use it, because we always kind of consider that the thickest line in any drawing is the earth. The earth is the biggest element that there is. I'm going to change that just a little bit like this. So what we're seeing now is that this thing slopes away from the house so the water can drain. Now don't pay any attention to the rectangle that seems to want to stick around. As soon as I click accept, that's going to go away. Okay, so this is kind of the overall shape that I'm after. I'll accept this, and you should be left with that fill pattern inside that region. That's perfect. Okay, down here at the bottom, it looks like I'm cropping out that line, which is really not a problem, but if you're just wondering why is that happening, you would want to turn on your crop region and pull it down so you can see the bottom, and then I'll turn that crop region off again. Now I'm showing the whole thing. Okay, and if you want to make any changes to this, you don't actually have to double click to go into the pink lines or the editing lines. You can actually just take a grip and move it left or right. See, I've got my crop region over here too, but that's okay. I'm going to leave it that way. I don't need that line over there. It sort of implies that, you know, this continues. We need some gravel down here at the bottom of the crawl space, which is actually here at the bottom of the footing. The crawl space doesn't start here, because you can imagine they had to dig all this out. They had to place the footing, place the concrete, and they're not going to come with dirt after that point and start filling this back in. So chances are, if I've got a crawl space, that it's going to be level with the bottom of my footing, and that's where we want gravel, so that when we're walking or crawling around in here, we're on gravel, not dirt. It's just a common practice. Okay, the problem is you don't have any way to add a gravel pattern. It doesn't exist in Revit. So if we go to Canvas and we go find, in a couple places, student resources, I've got some gravel patterns, but even better is probably just to go to the assignment, 3.4, foundation plan and details. I've got two patterns here. One of them is called gravel, one of them is called creek rock. I actually think I like this one a little bit better. It's a slightly more interesting pattern. Not that that should be important. You can use either one of these. Okay, but I'm going to click on this, and then I need to download it. And that's going to put it inside of my downloads folder. Okay, so you can go to your downloads folder and see, there it is, creek rock. Looks like I've got more than one. I downloaded it yesterday too. Anyways, now that it's downloaded, we'll go back into Revit, and once again we're going to go to filled region. So annotate region, filled region, and this time we'll start with the earth, but we'll edit the type again and duplicate, and we're going to call this one gravel. Okay, it still wants to use that earth pattern, so we better change this. But again, if you were to search for gravel, you wouldn't find anything. I have two patterns. I have the regular gravel, and I have the creek rock gravel. So you can see which one you really want to use, but you won't have those. So instead, you're going to go like this. Go ahead and create a new fill pattern. And if you left everything alone here, all it would be is a pattern with lines. And you could use the settings to adjust those lines. We don't need straight lines, so we're going to go to a custom type, and then we have to browse and find a file, the one that we just downloaded. So I'm going to hit browse, go to my downloads folder here. Okay, here's Creek Rock. And it's automatically going to name it as Creek Rock. For me, that's not going to work because I already have one, but I'll try naming this gravel instead. And you can change the scale, which will just make the whole thing bigger or smaller. And I went to 2, and that was actually too big, so it wouldn't display anymore. 1.1, 1.2, you can see it's all getting bigger. You really don't know what you're getting until you go place it in your project. And 1 is just fine, so we're going to leave it right there where it was. I'm going to click OK, and then OK again. And I've got it in. So what darkness do I want for these lines? And you know what? This is also a very busy pattern. So some kind of a light gray, maybe just like what we had before, is fine. And then I'll click OK, and I'm ready to start drawing. Now, just like I did last time, the line that overlaps needs to be a thick line. In this case, I'm going to make it thin to begin with because it'll just be faster if I draw a rectangle And when you draw a rectangle, they all have the same line style to begin with. So I'm going to draw this at about 4 inches thick. Okay, and then over here, this kind of explains to you what would happen if I left this line thin. This part of my gravel would overlap a little bit of my foundation, just that much that you can see. And it doesn't look quite right when you print it, so that's why I don't like to do that. I'm going to change this line, and only this line, to a thick. And then when we accept, this is what we'll get. Perfect. Okay, so now we've got gravel down below. We've got earth all around. And I think that's all that we need to do before we go and start labeling everything in the next video.